Hey Mustangs, in this video we're going to be taking a look at climate change. Now climate change has become very controversial in the United States because of politics, so we're going to be taking a look at scientific data to support climate change. Now, one big thing to understand is the fact that we're actually coming off of an ice age and we should actually be warming up. So it's actually normal for our planet to be warming up. Our planet has been warmer than it is today and it's been colder than it is today. But the thing that worries scientists the most is how quickly the planet is warming up. That's the key right there. So keep that in mind. How fast? Scientists believe that we're warming the planet by human actions faster than it actually should be heating up. And that's the key right there. So one of the big things that is believed to be causing climate change is deforestation. So deforestation is the removal of trees. And as a result of this, we're taking away organisms that actually pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Second big thing is the burning of fossil fuels. So fossil fuels, whenever we burn oil, coal, natural gas, we're actually putting tons of carbon dioxide up into the atmosphere. In fact, we actually recently got in 2019 up to about between 33 billion tons to 37 billion tons of carbon dioxide put into the atmosphere just by burning fossil fuels alone. So if we take a look at this simplified, really simplified version of the carbon cycle here, we see right here that a large amount of carbon dioxide is pulled out of the atmosphere by photosynthesis. So plants, if you remove plants, you're removing organisms that pull carbon out of the atmosphere. And then the other thing, burning fossil fuels, we're putting carbon dioxide that would normally take anywhere from hundreds of thousands, millions of years to be converted back from fossil fuels back up into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. So something that would take that long, we're doing in a matter of seconds when we turn on our car, when we light our stove, stuff like that. So we're actually generating carbon dioxide at a much faster pace, and we're taking away one of the biggest things that pulls carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So we're basically have way more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere as a result of this. So since we started actually recording carbon dioxide levels and monitoring temperature along with it, this is the trend we see. So as we see carbon dioxide fluctuate over the years, but increasing as time goes on, so has the average temperature of the planet. So we've seen an increase. They've corresponded, they've moved together. So as the amount of carbon dioxide has increased, the temperature has increased as well. Now, we can actually extend this further back, and scientists actually do. Scientists use ice core samples to calculate how much carbon dioxide existed in the past. And there's a really good video by Mark Rober that actually talks about this, and I recommend you take a look at that. All right, so there's three major things that happen with climate change here. The first one is an overall increase of global temperatures. Okay, now there's going to be many things that this has an effect on. So an increase in global temperatures, one of the big things that happens with hotter temperatures is that the ice caps melt. So this image down here below is showing since 1980, and this ends at 2010, but it's showing the polar ice cap. This is the Arctic ice cap here, and it shows it shrinking over time. So the ice cap in the Arctic is much smaller than it used to be. You might hear that it's actually extending out larger, and here's the thing that's going on with that. The old ice that you see here, that's basically what we're tracking here, is the old ice. That is shrinking and getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So every year during the summer when temperatures heat up, that old ice is melting. And what scientists have noticed is that the sea ice is extending out further than it did before in some parts of the Arctic, but it's really, really thin and it's new ice. So imagine that old ice just continuously gets smaller and smaller every summer until eventually we'll get to the point where we might not have sea ice in that area anymore. Okay. Now down at the South Pole, there's some interesting things happening there. On the west side of Antarctica, it's losing ice very quickly. On the east side, they're actually getting heavier drops of snow and ice on that, and developing ice on that side. But overall, if you look at the whole continent, Antarctica as a whole, it's actually losing ice. At the North Pole with the Arctic ice, it's actually sea ice, so it's actually part of the ocean itself. On the other end, though, Antarctica, all that ice that melts and comes off of Antarctica is adding extra water to the oceans. So that's going to cause ocean levels to rise as a result. And interestingly, this is, you think, okay, ice is melting into it, you're going to cause the temperature of the oceans to become colder. It actually is going to increase ocean temperatures because those polar ice caps, the ice actually reflects solar energy away from the planet. So it's actually good at reflecting solar energy. So as we have less and less ice at the poles, you're actually going to have more heat absorbed by the ocean because less is getting reflected away. So here we see the change in Arctic ice in this case from 1980 and how many square kilometers it was at. The lowest dip we saw was actually in 2012, and here we are 2019. So you see the Arctic again is shrinking, getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I actually read an article that last year, 2019, off the coast of Alaska, there was no sea ice in sight. So there was supposed to be sea ice, and yet there was nothing there. All right. With increased global temperatures, we're also seeing the melting of permafrost. Now, this we can connect to the importance of biotic and abiotic factors and how it actually helps support a community. So if the permafrost is melting, what's going to happen here is it's going to change conditions, and a lot of plants aren't going to be able to survive in the area. And of course, if plants can't survive, then other animals, organisms can't survive. Now, could other plants come in and fill the niche, stuff like that? Yeah, it's possible. But the big thing to consider here is how quickly this is happening. That is key right there. And then we're also seeing lakes that contain frozen methane. These lakes that have this frozen methane in it that have been in there for a very long time, as they melt, the methane actually gets released. That's what we see here, that you can actually light the methane on fire and show that methane is coming out of those lakes. And the scary thing, I don't want to say scary, but the interesting thing about that is that methane is a stronger greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So methane has the ability to trap more heat on the planet than carbon dioxide does. So if these frozen lakes melt, we're going to put a ton of methane into the atmosphere as well, because the focus is always on carbon dioxide. But methane is a really powerful, more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide is. All right. Next, with global temperatures rising, we have desertification. So desertification, as the temperatures rise, it's going to basically suck moisture out of the air. It's going to cause evaporation to happen quickly, and even moisture in the soil is going to lose moisture as well. So we're actually seeing areas getting turned into deserts, where there was once water, greenery, flora, fauna, they're actually turning into deserts. So that's happening in some places because, interestingly enough, climate change, we're seeing micro areas where climate change is actually happening faster in different parts of the world than others. So New Jersey is one place in the United States where they've actually passed the 2 degrees Celsius. Their average temperature is actually above the 2 degrees Celsius change that scientists say we want to avoid. And there's parts of India and Australia that have also experienced, and there's places all over the world. So we're seeing desertification of many places as well. With these increased temperatures, we're going to see loss and alterations of habitats and loss of food sources for organisms as well, which leads to endangerment and potentially extinction. So one of the biggest hit groups of organisms is amphibians. As the temperatures rise, they're losing wet habitats, and amphibians spend part of their life in the water. They often reproduce in the water, so they're losing those habitats, and they're having a difficult time with that. Additionally, there's a fungus that's going around, and this fungus is even more successful in warmer temperatures. So this fungus is spread all over the world, and it's also hurting their populations as well. And then these poor guys, polar bears. Polar bears are having a hard time finding food because they hunt on the sea ice. So they go out and they use their really good sense of smell to track seals and other organisms that are going to come up for air, and then they're able to attack and hunt that way. So they aren't able to hunt on the sea ice like they used to, because the sea ice, which used to extend over months of time, it's only like down to a month or less in some places, and it's not very thick, so they're breaking through it as they're walking on it, so they're having a really difficult time hunting and getting their prey, and as a result of that, a lot of them are starving. Some are using their incredible power to actually swim out to islands where they're actually hunting walruses now, which we didn't see before, which is a really hard thing, and they can actually get hurt that way. So we're seeing them try to adapt by going after different prey, and we'll have to see and find out if they're actually successful. Now, because of habitat loss and loss of food, we're seeing things like polar bears, elephants, kangaroos even, they're actually going into human settlements, and they're raiding for food and water and stuff like that, which, if you're talking about polar bears, they actually can hunt humans and kill humans and eat them. Elephants can be very dangerous too. Kangaroos, they can be dangerous, but it's actually putting humans at odds with many of these organisms that are just trying to survive. All right. I think this is the last thing with global temperatures here. So with these higher temperatures, we're seeing more extreme weather. So with the extreme weather, we see things like droughts. So Australia is going through an extreme drought right now. Europe is seeing the hottest temperatures ever recorded in Europe over the last few years. So they're getting temperatures that they've never seen since we've been recording temperatures. Doesn't mean they haven't existed in the past, but this is definitely something that's out of the ordinary, that we're seeing these higher temperatures in Europe. Off the California coast, there was a huge group of mussels that actually cooked in their shells because there was an abnormally high temperature in June, and they actually fried. They cooked inside of their shells because of these high temperatures when they got caught out at low tide, which normally during that time of year, if they got caught at low tide, it wouldn't have been a big deal, but these high temperatures actually wound up killing them. Really cool one, Mexico. Last year, 2019, they had a hailstorm at the end of June. I think it was like June 30th. And they had been having 90 some degree temperatures, and I'm talking Fahrenheit here, and all of a sudden they had this massive hailstorm in the middle of the night. Thankfully, it was the middle of the night, no one got hurt, but there was so much, I think it was like 6 feet of hail actually fell and buried cars and doors and all this stuff. So really unusual weather, extreme weather that we don't usually see. Venice, Italy, because of its location, it's often prone to floods, but we're seeing these floods, instead of happening every once in a while, they're happening all the time due to ocean level rising. And then hurricanes, you're hearing this a lot in the United States, where hurricanes are happening all the time, and some of them are having landfall. But what we're seeing is the power of these hurricanes. Before, people would say stuff like, wow, this is the hurricane of the century. You won't see one like this in a very long time. We're saying that like every year now. So with climate change, as these temperatures become warmer, the power of hurricanes is becoming stronger and stronger with those temperature changes. And then finally, with increased global temperatures, as the permafrost is melting, a lot of scientists believe that there are viruses that have been caught in that permafrost that humans probably have not seen before, and it's very likely that it could actually release these viruses as the permafrost melts and cause problems for humans, as these new pathogens that our immune systems have not seen before wreak havoc on us. And then certain pathogens we see are becoming more successful. A really interesting one is flesh-eating bacteria. So flesh-eating bacteria thrives in a warmer environment, and we've been seeing more incidences of flesh-eating bacteria as well.